Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Greg Anthony here, and glad you are back. Listen, I'm really glad you are back on the Investigative Journal, because if I'm back, then I know my listeners will be back. So glad you're here tonight. It's June 15th, 2017, day on our calendar, the Gregorian calendar, named after me, of course. And we got a great show for you today. Listen, let me start out by saying this. I want to thank a couple people for some kind donations that were made today, and some kind words by Ty Shore, one of my listeners. And you know something? When you're on the internet, you know, it is so, you know, there are people out there in space you don't even know about. And this really was interesting when Ty said this. He said, "Dear Greg, thank you so much for your radio show. You have taught me some of the most valuable information I have received in my entire life. Sorry for not being able to send more." Ty didn't say that he grew up on an island where there was only two people. No, I'm just joking. I'm sure I take that compliment with great humility. Sorry for not being able to send more. I'm kind of broke right now, but we'll send more ASP. Don't worry about it. I know what it's like to be broke. If we put all of our broke people together, you know something? We would have a good time. The hell with these elites. When they get together at their big, huge, posh dinners, they got to wear all these fancy suits and all these ties and act really appropriate. And then, you know, they don't have any fun. We would have a much better time if we got together. And he goes on to say, I think that is one of the best. Well, no, wait, I'm kind of broke. Okay, got that. You introduced me. Now, this is going to be interesting, because never in my life when I've done a story have I got such good and bad reviews. Ty said this: you introduced me to the flat earth info. And all you people out there that don't believe it's flat are going, oh my God, what's Greg done to Ty? I think that is one of the best things that has ever happened to me. Good for you. You know, who cares if you believe it's flat and this guy believes it's round? You have the right to do that without being criticized and without being ridiculed. And he says, I want to say more, but this page times out. Oh, it does. Yeah, I know they do that. I don't know how they do it, but they do it. Have had to start over several times now. Ty, thank you again. Persistence always is better than resistance. I bought a 50-foot steel ketch. Now I'm getting interested. Restoring it. Plan on sailing to small islands like the Cooks, etc., and giving KGVS to anyone I find with an interest in truth. And maybe try to find a passage through that damn ice wall, or see if the authorities turn us back or not. LOL. What's this L? You know something? I got to get up with it, because I never grew up with LOL. I know what it means. You and Max can come along if you like. It'd be some time until I'm done restoring, but hopefully not more than a year, maybe 6 months. Have done a lot already. Anyway, God bless you, and I hope you can continue your show. Thanks for everything. Now, that's an interesting thing that Ty brought up at the end there, continuing my show. A few days ago, I said I was on the brink of saying, you know what, I've done this for a long time, and maybe it's time to just, take the saddle off the horse, put the horse in the barn, and take a little siesta. And that's another point I want to bring up today, because I'm going to tell you what it's like on my first real day. Well, I've been here a number of days in Mexico, but I want to tell you what life is like, a daily life, and I think you'll enjoy it. But anyway, continuing the show, yes, I said, I'm going to put it in God's hands, and He hasn't given me an answer yet. I guess, God's on His own time, I'm on my time. I was like going to bed last night and saying, God, come on, will you please give me the answer? I need it now. And I fall into the same mistakes we all make. God's on His own time, but I want Him to be on my time. I'm on Pacific Standard. What time are you on? I don't know what God's time is, but He made them all. So I'm sure He's on all the time zones. But what I'm getting at is, I asked Him last night as I was rolling in the covers, I said, Thank you for everything. It's been great. I can't believe I'm, enjoying a new life again. And what I mean by that is, I remember when I left for Italy when I was younger. In fact, I was 28, and spending 7 years there at that age was just fantastic. I was a new person. In fact, an Italian told me once you learn Italian like this, or a language, or you get engulfed in another way of life, you have a new soul. And maybe that's true, God put people in so many different places. So, for example, he put a soul into somebody that lives in New Guinea. And he put a soul into somebody that lives in New Jersey. And he put a soul that somebody lives in what's that? I always love saying that island, Papua New Guinea. I don't know if I said it right. And so everybody has their soul, but a different way of expressing it, right? And so maybe when you engulf yourself in other people and you really allow yourself to join hands with another and assimilate. Do you hear that, Muslims? Assimilate. You're not here to overthrow America, are you? I hope not, But anyway, there are signs. I mean, I don't even want to get into all the disasters that happened this morning on my way to town. When I turned on, I get an American radio station here. I'm going to try to turn that off for a while, but I got to know what's going on. But anyway, so that idea of allowing yourself to assimilate and learning a language and putting yourself at the mercy of a new country in a sense and saying, okay, you guys, it ain't too bad here, is equivalent to, according to one Italian, he says, you have a new soul, Gregorio, you have a new spirit. And so anyway, if it's possible that a person has two souls, maybe I have one soul and it transfers over from Italian soul to American soul. But anyway, I digress. In fact, I digress so far I forgot where I left off. But what I did want to say was that I appreciated what Ty sent. And I really, I'm looking at this whole picture. Oh, continuing the show. Yeah, that's where I left off. What I have to do is I'm calling for people to donate that listen to this show for years. And to donate to me, you have to get specific here because First Amendment receives their own donations, and they put out YouTubes for me and done a hell of a job over the years, and I've been with them a long time. And if you want to help them out, I think you should also do that. But listen, we don't get anything from the radio station or anything when you go to First Amendment. So I need to keep this show going, and I've got two plans. One is to ask donations from listeners because you know that advertisers aren't going to buy what I say. And secondly, so go to Arctic, ARCTICBEACON.com, and you can get shows going back well over a decade. And press that donate button. It'll go directly to me, and I really appreciate it. And also, I'm thinking of starting a separate, staying with First Amendment, starting a separate podcast, doing another kind of show that will help support this show. It's like one hand scratches the other back, or whatever they say. And so I'm thinking of that and starting a podcast and all these things that these techies really are good at. And I really came from a generation where we weren't so, I got to get my name out there. I got to get this. We got to do it this way. It was kind of more late. People look back at my generation and go, God, you guys were in the Stone Age when it comes to communicating. But you know what? Communication is never going to change. It's always going to be based on truth. And so unless you can have the greatest technical messages in the world and spread them far and wide, but if you're not getting to the truth, what good are they? And so what happens is I'm going to try to get into the 21st century with this new technology that, my website is just halfway done, and I went through that story. And if I could improve that, it might improve. But I was always more concerned about the message. And if there was anybody out there that could help me establish a new forum to support this show as well and get the word out, I appreciate it. And I really want to update my website and make it streamlined so that I could compete with these other people. And then we'll have to deal with the algorithms of Facebook and all these people at Microsoft and all these places that control, and YouTube that control the message. They allow listeners, more listeners to garbage than they do to truth. So anyway, that's my spiel about donations. So please go to arcticbeacon.com, and we will stay on the air. Like I said, I'm giving it 3 or 4 or 5 days, talking, asking for directions, because I was really going to say this. If I can't dedicate a good show, do a good show, I have to just piece it together because I'm scrambling around to find a way to make a living, that's not worth doing. So hopefully I can get enough support to keep it going and do it justice. And through the years, it's happened before. It's nothing new. And it's a path I chose. So, suck it up, Greg. You're a big boy. And we'll get through it. All right. What did I want to talk about? Well, to finish this half hour, I wanted to go back to the show I did yesterday. And there was about 2 minutes left on that presentation that was really good about the Vatican involvement in the Rwandan genocide. And I never got to the numbers. There were over 1 million people killed within a short period of time. And this was just the most dastardly thing that I can ever imagine. And there were even eyewitness sightings of Vatican priests and nuns killing people. And this never gets reported in the West. Well, in March of this year, Pope Francis gave an apology for this. And I said yesterday, apologies not accepted from, and they shouldn't accept it in Rwanda. And it was a half-hearted one as well. And you go Google that, and you can find his apologies that were reported in CNN and Al Jazeera and all the other places, so you can get that. But I just wanted to follow up on that, on the story I did yesterday. So let's talk about today. I wake up, I'm driving into town in Mexico, and I turn on, and I get an American station that reports that there was a shooting, and I'm sure everybody's heard about it now. A congressman, Mr. Congressman Scalise, the whip of the House of the U.S. Congress, was shot in the hip. He's recovering, and there were 3 or 4 other people shot. The shooter was from Belleville, Illinois. I know Belleville quite well, because I worked for a newspaper in the capital city's chains there, right outside of St. Louis, the Belleville News Democrat. I spent a short time there. So I know Belleville well. It's a rural town in Illinois. And apparently the shooter, who went on a rampage at a baseball practice, the congressman, they put on a charity baseball event tomorrow every year, and they were practicing this morning. And some guy, I guess, came out shooting, shot 4 people, and then they shot him dead. So then I read there's another something going on at a military base. Then there were 4 people shot at a workplace somewhere. So it's a lot of bloodshed going on these days, and a lot of chaos. And it's building. And where is it building? I mean, this is something you got to think about. When I see these things, I start thinking, this is getting to the point where, there's going to be an all-out, something or other. And these events are really kind of, putting a mindset on people where they wake up and they expect. I was listening to all the reports during the day, and the parents were coming on going, I'm not sending my boy to a baseball field again, and all this kind of stuff. So fear reigns. And then Trump came out and gave his typical speech. You can imagine what it, you could probably recite it without even listening to what he said. But anyway, let me get back. That's enough on that. And let me do this. Let me tell you what a day is like in Mexico. When I come back here in a minute, I got to do one thing. But no, I'll stay right here. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about life in Mexico. And the reason I want to use today as an example is it was really the first day that I felt a little normal driving into town and doing all the things that you would do in America, but doing it in Mexico. What I found was that the people that I met today were polite. Most of the people I met didn't speak English. So I didn't have much to say because I speak Italian, but I really don't understand Spanish. But I enjoyed walking by people that I didn't know that said, Buenos dias. And I said, it shocked me at first because I'm so used to in America walking by people that don't say anything. Now, people that know me will say hi, they've seen me, but if you go into a place, go walk into any Ralph's or any place like that and walk by somebody, the chances of them saying hi are very slim. Now here I was walking into what they call OXXO, which is kind of like a place where you go get a cup of coffee in the morning, like 7-Eleven. And I walked by two guys. They looked to be workers in the field. And both of them looked at me and said, Buenos dias, and looked me in the eyes. And I was taken back by the first one, and my first response was going to be, and I kind of went, ciao. And then I went, buenos dias, because I'm so used to meeting foreigners and saying ciao. So the morning goes by, I buy my coffee, and I get in my car, and I look around, and it was just a nice feeling. People in the car next to me, all the kids were there going to school, and they saw Max, and they were so happy to see such a beautiful, they've never seen a dog like that, and they came up to the car and started, just being so friendly, and Max enjoyed it. So then I got in the car, and I decided I'm going to go have a little bit of fish breakfast. So I went near the ocean, and I found this place where I could park, and right by there, all it was just a little side, a lot of nice tables. Not nice tables, just a really nice place. Outside table so I could bring Max in, and we sat there. The waitress came, and I spoke to her in Italian, and she spoke English. And it was really a nice experience, very laid back, very polite. The waitresses and everybody much more polite than when I go to the typical American coffee shop. And I sat, and in the background, of course, was the nice music, and I felt relaxed. And so as I had my breakfast, a couple stray dogs came by, very, very, very mannered. They crossed the street perfectly. They came by the restaurant and had a little bit of fish given to them by the owner of the store. They laid down there. Max looked at them, didn't even feel threatened. They didn't come running, barking, anything. And I said, wow, these street dogs are something else. And I looked at Max and I said, you know what? You've never met street dogs, have you? You've always met these high fancy dogs in America, right? So Max meets these street dogs, and I think he liked them. And I think the first thing he probably noticed, he looked at me and said, hey, how come I got a collar on and he doesn't? And I said, buddy, that's the price you pay when you live in a rich country like America. Everything's controlled. Pretty soon they'll have a collar on me, and that's why I went to Mexico. I don't want any collars on me. And what's the nice thing about it is I remember when I went to Italy, I never paid much attention to the lira. It was the lira, not the euro then. And frankly, I'd never paid much attention to the peso. So now I know what the peso is, because now I'm transferring pesos to the little bit of dollars. And so you get an idea. I think today the peso is 17.9 or 18, about 18 to $1. So I find that there's so many great deals here. For example, I bought 5 gallons of the best water for 9 pesos. How much is that? That's 5 gallons of really good water for 9 pesos. That's 50 cents. And I know I had to talk to somebody here who's helping me to find out where to get the best water, where to go to get the best gas, and how to deal with the way they do things here. And that's what you got to do. And I have a good friend. In fact, he's lived here a long time, from Venezuela, by the way. He speaks good English, and he's helping me out. So that's really, really very, very important. Anyway, so we're at the restaurant, and, at the end, we leave the restaurant, had a great... Now listen to this. I decided about 10:30, 11, I would have fish tacos. I want to check out the tacos here. And the tacos were about 90 cents each, filled me up to the teeth, fresh fish. They bring a big platter out where you could fix your own taco. It was beautiful. Now go to Taco Bell and get one of those crappy ones. Man, that's the difference. And then they had the fresh fish store there. I went in to price the salmon. Now, I'm a salmon eater. Now, I was getting tired of prices in America, and you're getting this garbage. I don't even know. I can't tell if somebody's going to say, well, all the salmon's polluted, but not. So I went in there and priced their salmon. Is about equivalent to about $5.20 a pound, which is about half of what it is in America. It's $9, $10 a pound if you haven't bought salmon recently. And that's my favorite. Then there was some other fish there that was so darn cheap that's where I stop now, so I know where to go, and until I find a better place. That's a place to get some good fresh fish, and at a really cheap rate. So when you start adding it all up, it's kind of fun, isn't it? Because you're learning a new way of life. In fact, when I was sitting there, a guy came by, and there's a lot of poverty here, more than you see in America, but it's more of a dignified poverty. It kind of reminds me of Italy. And I tell the story about my good friend Cinque Mila. Now, that's $5 in Italian when I was there. And it's a similar kind of story. Now, Cinque Mila was an interesting character that I met in Italy, and he was outside of every place. I went into one of the coffee shops, and he'd be out there panhandling, right? And he was there, and he was talking and conversing as if he was one of the party, He wasn't like sitting there in a lump like you see the American bums. They don't talk, they look down. How do you expect to get anything that way? Cinque Mila was vibrant. He was talking. And I walked out, and I said, I like this guy. Here's 50 cents. He refused to take it. I said, why? He said, I only accept $5. I said, what? I'm not rich. He says, that's okay. Then you don't need to give me anything. I'm waiting for the rich people. They'll take care of me. And I started to wanted to do a story on this guy. And so I knew his friends, and everybody knew him. And the guy was incredible. He would make $20 to $30 a day and only get donations, or I call it a donation. What's the difference between him and me? I ask for donations because I do a radio show. So I'm just a bum on the radio station, right? And it's the way you ask for it and what you do that are important. So that's why when I see these people, you don't see many beggars on the street here. When I drive a big street, and this is an important thing. I see in America all these people, food for money. They sit there. It's very demeaning. Today, there's people on the street, but they have newspapers. And they have these little trinkets. They don't want anything for nothing. And, what I'm telling American people is if you're really destitute, figure out a way to stand on that street corner and give something. Don't just sit there and beg, But it's really a difference of culture. And, it's amazing to me. I have not seen one sign here. And these people are a lot poorer than Americans. I haven't seen one person, I've seen people, on the streets, but they're selling something, hats, trinkets, newspapers, something. Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel. waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn, the Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Okay, glad you're back on the Investigative Journal. And enough of Mexico. Let's get back to it another time, and I'll put in a few minutes here and there, but enough of that. But what were you doing 10 years ago? Do you remember what you said in June of 2007? Do you remember what you were thinking? Who was the players involved in your life? Let's do something fun. I'm going to play a show that I did 10 years ago on this very same network. Yes, it was Liberty Radio Live, which was First Amendment. And let's see, I just picked one at the top of my hat. I don't even know what I said or what I did, but it would be good to know what I was like 10 years ago. And I wonder if you think about that about yourself. What were you like 10 years ago? Do you know who you talked to? I can put a record on what I did. This was 2007 close to June, I think, somewhere in that vicinity. But anyway, let's see what the bum on the radio here had to say 10 years ago.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Thursday, October 4th edition of the Investigative Journal. I'm your host, Greg Szymanski, and today in the first segment of the show I'm going to field some calls and also some emails as well as touch on a couple subjects. One showing you how both Bush and Hitler got the Vatican stamp of approval and are basically working from the same agenda. And secondly, we're going to do two things today. We're going to add some information to the University of Hidden History, and I have a segment taped by Bill Hughes regarding the sinking of the Titanic, and we're going to do that in the second portion of the show, and also present some information to you via Bill Hughes in his book, The Enemy Unmasked, one you should get. And that's a short book. It's a real pocket-sized book. You can put it in your back pocket. I've got it right here, about 150 pages of information vital to this saving of this republic. And what he tries to do in Chapter 2, we're going to discuss the Illuminati, the Jewish front, and discuss the real controllers of the New World Order. And I think that's a real important topic because it's overlooked. Let me give you an example. Lately there's been a flurry of emails regarding 9/11. People seeking the truth, both good patriots and both people that are working for the government to infiltrate that movement, and those deciding who's who is very difficult. But the one thing for sure regarding 9/11 is that 6 years have passed, and we have got not 1 inch closer to getting at the truth in a legal manner, which we need to do, and that means to prosecute those who are involved in the mass murder of 3,000 people. And over the years, if you look at it like a law case and compile all the evidence, you could present an interesting case, although it falls a little bit short at this particular juncture because we have no subpoena power to get vital information from witnesses who are willing to talk, and from physical evidence that is mounting, but yet there's very little of it, only because the government has conveniently hidden much of it, as we've learned in the World Trade Center when they cordoned it off right after the towers fell, and most of the steel was then taken away before investigators could do an honest investigation in finding out how that building fell. And that was contrived and planned prior to this. So the real key is to look at this as a crime and to say, why haven't we gotten any closer to justice in 9/11? And it's like saying, why haven't we gotten any closer to justice in the Kennedy assassination and many other atrocities that have gone on in our country over the years? And the reason is that our judiciary, our government, have been taken over by a force more powerful than we even understand. And most people will say, well, it's a rogue politician, it's the Bush administration, it's haywire bankers gone wild. But it's much more than that. It's been a concerted effort to eliminate freedom in this country for hundreds, since the establishment of this country. And that's why reading history is quite important. Now, my point is, the reason we can't get a fair hearing on 9/11, and the reason that it's relegated to 9/11 movements on the internet, and not even getting into the mainstream where most of the population is, the reason it's there is because it has been a controlled effort from the minute 9/11 occurred to begin to do damage control, and they've done a good job. Now, the reason we can't get an honest investigation is because the corruption goes so deep and so high that no one was allowed to bring a case against the real culprits. Now, it's very simple. The government says 19 Arabs did it. Our enemy is Al-Qaeda. And then they went through and they say it over and over again on how the Twin Towers were brought down. Then there's a whole bunch of other information that shows the government story cannot stand any type of scrutiny. And that's the reason why, if there was a fair federal prosecutor, a fair Supreme Court understanding of a level of getting this into a court case to get the criminals behind bars for this mass murder, the real ones, not the fictitious Arabs that they perhaps used on the CIA payroll and put up to do certain things, but to get to the real planning, the conspiracy behind it, and then to prosecute these people in a court of law. Now, what is so difficult about that? Well, if you have a complete corrupted government, and you have a complete corrupted media at both the mainstream and the alternative, you will never, ever get a fair trial. Now, on my show over the years, if you go back into my archives, which I might add, I'm still trying to reconstruct because of the actions of a certain radio station that took them down, which is not, and I never get a copy of my own work, and that was orchestrated. They don't want to hear some of the things I used to say about the Jesuit order, some of the interviews, but in my hand, I'm holding right now, if you go to my archives, you're going to see a lot of missing holes over the years, but I've got a DVD or a CD sent to me by a listener, and it's the complete archive. So I'm getting these now back up on my website so that all of them are intact. So a good listener has got the whole body of my work saved, and I was stupid because I didn't do it. And I guess, you know, I'm one of these guys that still is in the dark ages when it comes to technology, and I should have saved each one of them, but I guess I trusted the wrong people. But anyway, all the archives will be complete shortly. I'm getting them to a person that's helped me put them up on my website. But let me get back to 9/11. If you go back and look at some of the stories that I've written and other journalists have tried to do on the internet, I started to look at this from a criminal case, and there's elements to murder, and there's certain things that you do to try and get down, you know, try to figure out who did the crime. And so I tried to collect as much evidence as humanly possible. And boy, when I was doing it as a journalist, I was just sitting there some nights and I would go, boy, wouldn't it be great if the New York Times or the Washington Post or all these papers that have a lot of resources would actually use them for the right purpose and use a person like me and other reporters working together to get at the truth behind who did 9/11 and who is bringing down this republic. Wouldn't it be great? But knowing that the owners of the Washington Post and the New York Times are there to put a lid on the story and not to tell you the truth about it, makes me upset, because I wanted to be a journalist from the time I was in college. After I finished my football career, I said to myself, what the heck am I going to do with my life? I'm not a good mechanic. I'm not very electric, and I don't do things with my hands very well. In fact, can't do much of anything outside of, I was a fairly decent athlete, but only at the college level. So I had to figure out something I could do, and so I liked journalism, and I was curious about politics and had no idea of what was going on. I was a typical jock in college, but liked to write, and I always just liked to do that. So I started my education began probably in the extra year I spent in college, and then getting a job at papers and starting to read and learn and really educate myself, because the college system doesn't educate you. That's one of the reasons why I put up on my website the University of Hidden History. And the reason I did that was because I feel that even if you go to universities and get PhDs, and heck, I went and got a law degree, but didn't really learn exactly what's really going on in the judiciary, what's really going on in the law profession, until I got out and decided I don't feel like practicing. But the point is that I was upset when I started to understand that the profession I chose was corrupt. And not corrupt in so many, I mean, if you want to go to your local town and write about small town politics or even state politics at certain issues, you can still do that, of course, in America. But when you want to get to the problems, when you want to start really understanding understanding what your government is all about. That's taboo. And that's only there for the elite. And you are told to do your job or get out. And that's what I object to. Because I believe that so many Americans can do so much more if we had freedom of speech, if we had freedom of the press, if we had freedom of our own economic system, which has been basically taken away from us. And that is what I get upset about, is when, and so is my dog who's barking. I guess I live way out in the country, and he sees something out there, so if you hear, he's a little upset too at what's going on. But there's just so much more you can do. So let's get back to 9/11. If the government, if there was a press that was working hard that could expose this, we would have gotten to the truth. We would have found out that the Vatican and the Jesuit order, along with high-level people in both our governments, in certain other governments around the world, including England, and others at high levels in the Islamic world, put this thing together. And they had to do it in an orchestrated manner. And there's so many tentacles to this story that it would take 100 good journalists, a good solid 6 months to a year to work together and to get to the bottom of this, but it could be done. And then it would take a prosecutor, a federal prosecutor, who wasn't afraid with subpoena power, that would tear down the halls of government to get to the truth about who killed these people and who killed, all these innocent people in the Twin Towers, and also all the others that are affected by this crime, in the sense of many of the workers now coming down, firemen, policemen, first responders who are coming down with all kinds of cancers because of the exposure to all these toxic chemicals. The case is huge, but it can be handled. And if there was an energetic prosecutor who was given the resources that our government has to get to the bottom of who did this crime, we would find that people I mentioned in the Vatican, the Bush administration, the Clinton administration, all of their underlings, Giuliani and the rest of them, would all be in front of a tribunal. And they would be asked questions like, how did you create Al-Qaeda? How did you come up with this plan? Cheney, of course, would be there too, and all these guys. And the whole conspiracy would be uncovered. And that's what the world is waiting for America to do. People in Europe, people overseas, waiting for American justice to kick in, the freedoms to kick in. But what they see is a country held hostage, people too busy with their own daily lives, given a little bit from the elite so that they don't, they're kept placated, they're kept happy just to stay away from anything that has to do with these major stories in our country, and let us handle it for you, as Bush would say. And so the world is upset. The world is a little disappointed, and I would say a lot disappointed in America. But I think there's a reawakening happening, and I think the world should look to shows like mine and to other people out there who have tried to break down this power structure in a real simple manner, and that is to get people on who know about it, not afraid to talk about it, and aren't afraid to stand up to the corruption that goes so deep even into our alternative media. And that's why they will sit there day after day ad nauseum. I'm so ready to just stop this whole thing because I get so upset when I listen to a lot of these other shows, because what's happening is it's just a whole bunch of talk, and it's never talking about the real power structure, which is the only way that you're ever going to get justice. And I try to tell people that. Some people criticize my show now, and they've seen me change a lot over the years, and that is to concentrate on a certain issue in depth daily. And they say, well, you got to bring on all these other people. And you know what I say to myself? This isn't the time to do that. I mean, I'm not entertaining you here. If you want to come to my show to be entertained, if you want to come and to listen to, I could spend my day finding a whole bunch of guests. Listen, I've been a journalist my whole life almost, and I know how to get a story, and I know there's so many interesting things out there that I'd be love to be doing. I mean, I see a lot of things that I'd like, but I can't. And something is holding me back. And that is basically an instinct that you have as a reporter that is kind of like an instinct you have if you're a good construction worker, or you're a good carpenter, or you're a good mechanic. You may not know exactly what the problem is in that engine, but your instincts are such that your experience tells you to look here, to look here, to look here, and to center on certain things. And even if it takes you 3 days to fix that engine, why should you be messing around with a newfangled muffler and putting on all these exotic things on your car when you can't fix the main problem in the engine? And that's what I'm trying to do. Fix the main problem without giving you a lot of frill. And we're not going to sit here on this show and I mean, I could think of 3 stories right now that would be great to talk about, but we don't have the time any longer to talk about Mars. I mean, there's many people out there with these theories now. The elite are planning to inhabit Mars, and I could probably spend my life doing that. Or maybe I could spend my life trying to find out if extraterrestrials really exist. Or many other things that would be kind of fun, in a sense, even if they didn't. Or finding out many other things as a journalist, traveling here, doing this, doing that, bringing you stories that you'd never see before, never hear before. But for me, it isn't the time any longer, and call it an instinct like a good mechanic who wants to solve the engine problem, and if he's going to spend 3 days talking about that major problem in the engine, he's going to do it, and he's not going to worry about the rest of it until that is solved. And that's kind of what I'm doing on this show, is to give you an opportunity to concentrate on the major issue. And that major issue is this: to really uncover the conspiracy. 9/11 is a great way to start. And if we could find perpetrators there, we could then find the perpetrators who are doing the same thing in our pedophile rings. We could find the same people who are, for example, Clinton's deep into this. And if we had subpoena power, actual power, to bring these people to justice, whoever said a president, if he commits a crime, is above the law? Whoever said a former president, if he's found to have committed a crime, is above the law? Now, the point is, you can't accuse him yet. The evidence is mounting that these guys know what's going on. But the only way we're ever going to get to this, bottom of it, is to clean house in our Congress and Senate, to clean house in our judiciary, to realize that we can't salvage this government any longer, to understand it in that way. And I'm not saying to you right now, take up arms and take over Washington. That's not the way to do it. But the way to do it is this, and maybe I should say it to you. The way to do it is this: if you're a real dissenter, if you really are a dissenter, in whatever way you do it, you must agitate the people in power to a point. You force them to do something. You play their hand. You've got to force their hand. And if you never get to that point, they don't care about you. I mean, it's like, going hunting for a bear with a BB gun. I mean, you can't do it. And what you have to understand is that for example, if we are going to uncover the Jesuit order and the Vatican and all these people in high places that are doing these evil things, we've got to get a concerted group of people that are willing to work together in a peaceful manner, but in a manner that is going to force them to make a move, force their hand. And I believe even Gandhi would say that, because he would say this then. He would say, if you are a people that believe in yourself, and if you don't want people to control your life any longer, similar to the way the Indians were controlled by the British, if you want to make a move and take your country into your own hands, you are the ones in control. Right this moment, you sitting there listening to this show may not think it, but you are in control. And they the people that are doing these evil deeds, and whether we prove that they're doing it through a court of law, we prove also through God's help that we can get justice, the power lies in you to do this. But only if you understand that together, all of us must go after the correct enemy. It wouldn't have done Gandhi any good to go after the wrong group. I mean, why would he be marching? But if we march today on Washington for 9/11, if we march for other issues, okay, there's a whole group of so many different things. What are we marching? Who are we fighting against? Do you even know? And what kind of value does it bring? You're not forcing their hand to do anything. You're instead giving them control, because you're letting the real controllers, the people who are doing the real evil, to allow them to sit behind their black curtains and sit there and laugh at us, because they still have the control and they know it, because they don't even, they're saying, look at these Americans, they're marching, but they don't even know who they're marching against. Boy, they're going to be easy to, and so all that happens is you get 100,000 people marching on Washington for an issue like 9/11, or you get another 100,000 marching for other gun controls, another one, and what happens in the end? Absolutely nothing.
Okay, we're back in 2017. Wow. I got to digest that, but anyway, I hope you liked our traveling back in time. And don't forget to think about that. What were you like 10 years ago, 20 years ago? Boy, I wish I had a recording of myself when I was like 5 years old. I probably said a lot more smarter things then. But anyway, folks, thanks for indulging me on that journey into the past. And, don't forget, donate to arcticbeacon.com. There's a donate button there. You can get all these shows. You can go back almost 13 years. And that's not an unlucky number. See you tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today, so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.